then I'm going to pull up my notes. I'm going to pull up my notes.
Let's do it, man.
My...
Got the stream up.
You see the stream there, buddy?
Oh, I gotta watch it when I see it. I see it. It's awesome. I can't wait to watch Seventh Seal. It's an awesome movie.
Open the left seal for real.
That's is that Bone Thugs?
That's Notorious Thugs by Notorious B.I.G. and Bone Thugs. The both of them.
And Bone Thugs.
Yeah, both of them are involved in that one. Cool. So we got that. I feel like there's something I'm missing. Maybe not. So the media source is paused. Let me start it over. I put a slight transparency on it because I think that'll get past any sort of auto checker if one runs when I try to upload it to YouTube. So that's what that is. I'm not actually afraid that somebody's going to get us in trouble or a boss is going to pick up on the Seventh Seal playing. It played.
Right.
It accepted like numerous episodes of anime and almost a full episode of Dragon Ball Z or a full movie of Dragon Ball Z for the first video. So. Yeah, I think we're good on that front. I guess since you didn't provide a banner, I will do the introduction here. And the introduction, well, I won't do the full introduction, but you'll see the banner in it. That's one of your images that I put some words over. That's the name of the essay that we'll be covering today. It's Belief, Liberty, Faith, Fear, Final Fantasy XVI, written by my good friend Pablo here, who's right behind the banner. And Pablo, I would like you to explain what this banner is and what the connection is here. We got some old timey stuff here. We got a field. We got some characters in a different hue. So yeah, take it away.
All right, so I'm gonna do a brief 3 minutes here, Max. Yeah, this image is super cool. I think you did a great job. I just didn't have time. I took a big nap this morning, and my kid, when he got home from his grandparents' house, he was real busy, and so I wasn't free until like an hour and a half ago. So didn't get made. Anyway, this is great. I think you did a great job. I mean, the two things I was thinking about the most while I was writing this essay was the Seventh Seal. I'd recently seen it right about the time I was beating Final Fantasy XVI while I was playing it. And it's one of my favorite images from Final Fantasy XVI of Clive and Shiva there. It's a great image. So to me, I love that you have Death on the left playing chess with Antonius Block, the knight. Unwinnable, by the way. Death always wins. And Clive here is hugging his love on the eve of that he's probably going to like destroy the world, and he doesn't know what happens when you kill God, right? So there's Antonius like smugly like I'm going to try to defeat Death, right? And then there's Clive. It's a similar image, and I just love Ingmar Bergman. He puts a lot of his images centered like that. There's not a lot going up top and then from left to right. A lot of his images are really striking and really centered. And the same thing with Final Fantasy 16. So I saw some visual similarities there. And there's Block. So everyone can see here. We got the movie going in the right. So I might comment on that a little bit as we watch. That's Block waking up on the beach. He's headed home from the Crusades. The Black Plague is all over Europe in the same way that the Blight is attacking Valistea in Final Fantasy 16. So that wonderful. And then Belief in Liberty, Faith is what carries Block. Faith that he can defeat Death, even though Death has never lost a battle. So yeah, it took a couple minutes. I'm gonna stop there. Go ahead, let's get into it.
No, it was a good explanation. I think you can't defeat Death reminded me of a painting that I was into a little bit when I was writing the Pajama Sam article, and even before that, there's this painting. I don't remember who it's by, but it's called In Arcadia Ego, and I think it's a like a French Baroque style painting. You can see here. There's a few different versions of it. My favorite version of it has a skull in it, and on the skull, on the actual block that the skull is standing on, it says Et in Arcadia, and that's the painting's name, is Et in Arcadia Ego. And what it stands for, if I remember correctly, it's called.
It's Latin.
It means like even in paradise, I am, or I think that's the exact translation. But the meaning of the painting, at least is what's believed, is that even in Arcadia or paradise, death still exists. I am. I'm still living, and death is still there, lurking behind the corner, even in paradise. Like if you go to, like a paradise on earth. I don't know. I don't think it's a religious painting. I think it's like, even if you attain paradise on earth, death is still there, waiting to claim you. So I thought that's what it reminded me of. But yeah, cool. Let's move ahead. We have some questions here. I know you wanted to stop by 11, so we can try to go through it. But I have a feeling that
We might go a little further. We got started pretty good, so we
yeah.
might go far.
Yeah. So the first question is why. I don't know why I wrote this question, and it feels a little biased, but it says, "Why does Final Fantasy XVI exist?" Period. Question mark, actually, not a period. Question mark.
All right, so I'm gonna put 4 on actually. That's good. Why does it exist? Um, timer 4 minutes. Why does it exist? So I put an extra minute on there because I want to also. Block has made his deal with death. At this point, he's headed off. He's played a few rounds of chess. So why does it exist? It exists because there were 15 other ones that came before it, and they made a whole lot of freaking money. And they're not gonna stop making these things until they stop making money. And even then, sometimes they have to make money. They have to lose money for a while before they stop making it. It's such a strong property. It's a series that's been around since before I was born. Um, so why does it exist? It exists to make money. It exists to entertain. It exists to be written about and ruminated on. It exists to like help me make connections between movies and like sketches that only I cry so hard when I'm watching from laughter. Uh, yeah, that was shorter than I thought. Did
Mm-hmm.
that any of that open anything? Oh, I was also gonna say, okay. I like that you brought up a painting. I was writing down to my notes so I can keep up. The block says to the knight, he says you play chess, and that's like, how do you know that? He's like, I saw it in a painting once, and there is a real painting I think that was in Rome or maybe in Athens.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
like the Grim Reaper playing chess. Uh, so yeah, I'm really excited to do this. Final Fantasy is a series that I've loved since I was a little boy.
Mm-hmm.
I will probably still play the 17th one. They have to get a lot worse than this one. This one is trash. But it has to get worse than trash because I still made what I think was a pretty cool piece of writing. There's a lot of cool pictures. The one that's up on the screen right now is like, again, that's that center kind of real monolithic imposing imagery that I do think the game did very well if I was
Mm-hmm.
just bashing like the face buttons over and over. So there we go.
Cool. So why does Final Fantasy 14 exist? So from my understanding, Final Fantasy 14 was, I think, written and directed, or maybe not written, but directed by the same guy who does Final Fantasy 14, right? Or this is Final Fantasy 16. The same guy who does Final Fantasy 14, who's I think his name's Yoshi P. I think is his nickname, right? Um,
Yeah.
I think that's where he got famous was with 14 and MMO. Um, I think that's good context, I guess. You know who the composer is for this? I didn't ask anything for music. Is it the same guy who does 14? I think his name is Soken.
Yeah, it is. It's soaking.
It is Soken, okay. Soken's, I think, a good composer. I think he's really good with motifs. Like in 14, he has like a lot of motifs. Like every expansion has its own like little motif. You know what I'm saying? Like in the song, and it always comes up at other points. I think it's cool. Why is there a fucking? Oh my god, it's so cringe. Hold on. There we go. Now the video is better. You should have told me that it was messed up. It's better now though. So yeah. So
There's so
that's
much shit going on. I can't tell what's messed up. Man, you got Rod Wave counting blood money. He's the
yeah.
boss. This is great. I love. That's my favorite image. That was the first image that I made. We'll talk about that again later. It'll definitely come up. But I'm
Yeah.
glad you chose that one. I love that one so much. That was my favorite one. But
Good.
anyway, continue.
Cool. I forgot to. Yeah, there's like so much going on in this stream that I forgot to play the actual Final Fantasy 16 footage. So I've done that. Next question. How are Tim Robinson's I Think You Should Leave, which is a television show? I don't know if we can call them television shows anymore because they're all on Netflix now. Is this like streaming show? How are Tim Robinson's I Think You Should Leave, his streaming show, and Final Fantasy XVI related? Because when I had read your essay, I couldn't help but notice that you had put links to skits from that streaming show. And I'm going to do my best, Tim Rogers, from that streaming show. And I noticed that most of the first part of the essay is about that streaming show. So, can you tell me how these things are even remotely related? Was that good?
Yeah, do me. You sound a lot like him. You do. You sound with the glasses. Yeah. So do me a favor and pull up the picture with It's got Tim Rogers. It's got Johnny Cash. It's got the Twin Peaks
Yeah, I got it.
alternating with the Holiday Inn. Yeah.
You're a little bit
Um,
behind, but I have it,
yeah, of
yes.
course. Right. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna start the clock a little bit. So I love that sketch. That sketch, it's described there. If you haven't seen it, I definitely think not you. You've probably seen it or decided not to. But anyone watching, maybe they could watch it. So Tim Rogers almost said. Tim Robinson has this great. I'm a fan, and it's okay if people have differing tastes. That's going to happen. But I've cried a lot, like laughing at a lot of his sketches because they surprise me pretty often. And even when I think he can't surprise me more, he just keeps going and going. So this one, Johnny Cash stand-in is like singing this song that like the record producers are very interested in, and then Tim Robinson like thinks that he can like help. He's the bass player, and he starts like talking about how the bones are like the skeleton's money because it's the night that the skeletons came to life. I'm not gonna do it. If that sounds interesting at all to anyone watching, like definitely check it out. But it was so funny to me, and I had a lot of fun watching it. And I guess in this
So,
kind of weird.
can you explain how the bones are money? I noticed you said that a lot, but could you explain that a little bit? Because I think that's a key point in this first part, in the first chapter of your essay, is about how the bones are their money. How is the bones the skeleton's money again?
So there's no. That's to me that's part of the comedy, right? There's no on my camera fell down. There's no. Oh, because my chair. Because I'm with the mic'd up here. Um, there's no explanation. It's absurd, right? He's just like he's imagining the character is like imagining on the fly some kind of funny alternate or scary universe where the skeletons come back to life, but they use bones for money. So that's why they've come back to life. There's a whole paragraph explaining this as well, virtually the exact same as I am now. And the bones are their money, and they use that to come back to life so they get more bones. They'll pull your hair up, but not out, right? You can't pull it out. And worms are also the currency. But all of this is just the absurdity of the sketch, and I found it funny. So the connection there to Final Fantasy 16 is that I had a lot of fun playing Final Fantasy 16. I had a lot of fun, and I'm not ashamed to say that I looked forward every night to playing that game. I started playing it again. I ended up switching to Metal Gear, but I enjoyed it. But when I thought about it, I was like, it's kind of like that sketch. Like that sketch was real life, right? Like if that was a real song on a CD, I might laugh, but I'd be like, I don't normally laugh when I'm listening to Johnny Cash, right? It's not Johnny Cash. It's not good Final Fantasy. It's just this ironic kind of enjoyment. This is some kind of ironic kind of goofing around, like what I see on the screen right now. Like Clive is just zooming in, he's zooming out. There's 5 things you can do that really don't add to any other Final Fantasy. In the same way that it's like, why are the bone ceremony? This makes no sense. You're ruining it, Yoshi P. To be quite honest with you, and I like jumping up in the air and falling down, but
Yeah, the Dante stuff. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, the Dante stuff is just simply not good. Um, but so the Tim Robinson, I was just having a lot of fun, and I wanted anyone that read it, I kind of want to spread I want to spread the love with that show because I had a lot of fun watching it. Um, what else?
Gotcha.
But that's kind of what I thought, and I thought it'd be creative to kind of bring in this really funny sketch and tie it in with this game that I do think it's well made. I do think it's totally worth. I don't know, 70 is kind of steep, but that's the price. If it's worth the going
70,
price.
jeez.
Yeah, way too much. But yeah, it can be had fun with, but you're not gonna listen to it in the Johnny Cash playlist. in the same way that I'm not going to talk about it in my Final Fantasy playlist because it's not the same kind of music.
Right. Gotcha. Your camera knocked down, by the way. I can't see your face.
Oh, it's fixed at this point. It should be, right?
It's
Or
not. I
maybe
can't see your
you can
face.
see my body.
A little bit more up.
I'm afraid it's going to fall. Hold on. How about that?
Yeah, that
We'll
bit
try
works
that for
better.
a little bit.
Yeah, that works better. Yeah, I like that how you tie that in. So the bones of their money, its absurdity, kind of like what Clive is doing right now on the screen, which
Right.
is God of War, and it looks like there's some inputs where he does like a cutscene attack. He does a lot of those. Um, yeah, the combat's interesting because it does really look a lot like God of War or Devil May Cry, and you can even see he's got like these different types of attacks that like one like pulls the guy to him, and then he just does like a bunch of Dante slash combos that look all stylish. There's fire coming off of his sword,
Mhm.
like he's flaming with Optimism's flame or whatever, and like he's just he's into it. He's killing people. He's getting points. I don't know. All right, my next question is I'm going to do this in the Tim Rogers voice again. If you had to explain the gist, no, I'm sucking with it. If you had to explain the gist of the story, how would you? I think that was a little better. It was kind of like
Okay,
Duke
the
Nukem.
gist.
But yeah,
No,
go
it's okay.
ahead.
I mean, it's the same. He talks like Duke Nukem.
That's
So
true.
the gist of the story, I don't remember it 100% because I've been playing Metal Gear, but like, um, it's Cain and Abel essentially. That's one of the Jungian archetypes that get pulled out in Final Fantasy 16. It Clive is supposed to be the inheritor of Ifrit. Um, his family is the inheritor, but he doesn't. He's passed over. Not sorry, not Ifrit. My bad. I misspoke. That's a spoiler. This is gonna be full of spoilers. Of Phoenix. But his younger brother Josh is instead chosen, and the mother is a massive raging B word, and so she kind of treats Clive horrible. It's kind of a Cinderella. It's got some elements of Cinderella there. It's reminiscent of Game of Thrones. It's grimdark, a little bit of Berserk influences there. It's definitely written. I can't remember what his role is in some of the other either maybe Tactics Ogre games or maybe just the other Vanadil games like Final Fantasy Tactics games. But some of the story writers, if not the main one, I think worked on one of those games, did the story somewhere in that Vanadilian and related lineage. Yoshi P definitely directed. I don't think he wrote the story. I want to say it's a woman that wrote it, but someone's gonna have to fact check me. Maybe not now, maybe later. If I say something that's wrong, I'm okay to be wrong. Someone else can be right and inform whoever else. I don't have to be the smartest person on the stream. Um, but it's great. The story's a lot of fun. It's like you think Clive would be jealous, but he's supportive. But he must harbor some jealousy, and I think the symbol of that jealousy comes with the next. Uh, comes to the fact that he secretly harbors the icon of Freet. So there's a second icon of fire. It's kind of hard to explain the gist of it. I got 2 minutes. I should be able to do the big gist in a way to make it interesting in two
Yeah,
minutes.
go ahead.
All these your classic Final Fantasy summons, instead of like one summoner summoning them, they're kind of like gods that manifest inside chosen people. And sometimes it's their lineages, sometimes it's a little random. It's got Titan, Leviathan is mentioned, but he is no longer extant. You have Bahamut and Phoenix. You have Shiva, and it's all very cool. I think it's well done. It's interesting. And these powers that manifest, of course, they start taking a political hold and start making political moves and infighting. And at the same time, like the planet is dying, and that's sort of a question that's on the political stage. So that is the story. That's the big political story. And at the same time, you play Clive, who is trying to solve the mystery of who killed his dead brother. Spoiler alert, it's actually Clive that killed his dead brother. Another spoiler alert, his dead brother is not dead. Another spoiler alert, his dead brother is killed again at the end. But another spoiler alert, his dead brother comes back to life in post game post credits cutscene. You find out that Clive is actually dead. So the brothers die a lot. It's like Cain and Abel happens like over and over again. Um, there's a lot of sex and violence. I think it's the first mainline Final Fantasy game to be rated M, like
Oh, is it?
with the Roman numerals. Yeah, it's rated M. It's very violent. There's nudity. There's definitely implied sex. There is a lot of
Implied.
the F word. Yeah, like that one image I posted that I thought I said I think the reference to Berserk. It's Clive and Jill. Um, they're naked but covered, like their arms are covering any like private parts. At
Hmm.
the campfire, I think is doesn't when Guts has sex with Katja. I think there's a similar scene to that, but I could be
Yeah.
mistaken.
Yeah, and
Um,
Berserk, the 1997 one, I think, or 1991,
yeah, yeah,
1999.
but
I
that
don't remember.
yeah, it's somewhere around there. But that's the story, you know. It's figuring figuring out these mysteries, and there's a lot going on, you know, that I can't pull out in just a couple minutes. But I don't have to, because those are the general beats, and I'm
Hmm.
sure we'll touch on a lot of other beats throughout this. And if any of it sounds interesting, I would recommend anyone that likes this kind of stuff to play it. If you got 70 hours to kill and $70, like I would recommend a purchase.
$70. That still amazes me that games are $70 now. That's interesting. I mean, all right. The story does sound interesting. Are there any? Does Shiva turn into a motorcycle in this?
She does not, which is really cool. Shiva, um, yeah, she does. She does not. I was gonna say something. Something you said just a minute ago. I was gonna add to, but doesn't matter. No, she does not turn into a motorcycle. And I think that's a really base choice. I think all the icons look pretty cool. Like I don't know if I want to stand behind like the coolest versions of summons I've ever seen, but
Hmm.
I don't think there's anything wrong with them. I think they're better than what we got in Final Fantasy 12. I think I'll stand behind it. Oh, and this is a great scene, by the way. Seventh Seal. Block is talking to who he thinks is a priest, but it's actually Death,
Yeah, it's
who
Death,
is
right?
just he's pretending to be the preacher, and he's like, "Well, what are your secrets in the chess game?" And Block just spills them. Right, then he turns his head to look at him. I'm watching your stream now, and that's actually in one of the pictures from the story. I separated that a little bit and put one of the big crystals in the middle. But it's a great scene. It's how Block feels trapped by the world, right? And he's wrongly looking for to death to solve his problems. At this point in the movie, he thinks that like beating death will solve his problems like with living. And Clive in the same way, like kind of thinks that like killing everything or killing whoever killed his brother because he doesn't know that it was him will solve his problems. You know, will solve his family problems and everything. His dad is dead. There's echoes of Hamlet in the story. It's maybe I'm just like a punk like B word about it, but I was totally hooked about it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, so it
Anyway,
sounds like you really like the story and you got a lot out of it. That's good. You've explained the gist of it. That's great. My next question is why is the essay led with Taking Back Sunday lyrics?
that's a great question. I'm going to talk about that. So I love Take Back Sunday, and less the older I get. When I was a teenager, we harp on nostalgia. What do you say? Wax on nostalgia. You
Wax
said that
nostalgic. I
one
think
time.
I used that in one of
Yeah,
my articles. I'm gonna get some more
that's a good
wine, but you
line.
can keep going. Yeah, I like that line too. You can keep going because this is all you. So yeah, I'll be right back. It'll take 2 seconds, so don't let me stop you.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Um, so Take Back Sunday are a pop punk slash emo band from the early 2000s. They're like 20 years old, and they're really good. Or used to be. The last two albums haven't been that good. I was gonna ask when he gets back. Actually, I wish he wouldn't have line. To put on the picture, the Rod Wave picture, because I was making that picture first, and when I was doing the images, and I was listening to Rod Wave music because I know Forrest listens to music as well, and it inspires him. So I thought, and I was making an image, and I love that image. It's the image from the single or maybe an album of Rod Wave's "Weight on My Shoulder." I got a text from my ex. She said it's getting colder. Baby, it's all that weight on my shoulders. Right. Well, you're back. You're back. Good. So put up the image of Raw Wave with the why can't you just be happy? Because that's the image that I'm kind of thinking about now. That's why that was the first one I
Where
made,
is it?
and so I was it's right before it's at the end of preface part 2. So it's probably the fourth or fifth image going down.
So
So
it's
it's the last one
oh,
with
so
Take
it's
Back Sunday
after
lyrics.
the one. So okay. Gotcha. I like
Yeah.
the Yoshitaka Amano looming presence in the background here. I think that's cool. Is that from Final
Yeah.
Fantasy XVI, like the promotional art, or is that a random piece from him? I
I
feel like I've
can't
seen that.
remember. I can't remember. I did probably not from FF16, but so I made that. why can't you just be happy? Because like one
Mhm.
night I was writing and I was like I was blasting this game. Like I trashed this game. I want to say pretty hard, like entirely throughout the preface. I'm like it does all these things wrong, and like
Yep.
I'm almost pissed off that I'm having a good time. But then the next morning I woke up and when I went back to my writing, I was like, man, I was like, you had a lot of fun playing this video game. Why are you so freaking angry? And I was listening to Take Back Sunday, and that line came. I'm like, it's a refrain at the end of one of the songs. It repeats, "Why can't you just be happy? Why can't you just be happy?" So that's like me indicting myself, right? Like, why just have fun with it? It's okay just to have fun with it, and that's twofold, right? One, it defends the game, although the game is still trash. But two, it defends me like having fun trashing it as well, right? Like it's okay to just be happy. And so when that clicked, and I started listening to even more Taking Back Sunday while I was making the pictures, I was finding more and more lines. Like that one with Hegel, right? Please, please, I'm running out of sympathy. That refers to like man, I can defend like the way these games have been going over the past 20 years, but it's getting harder and harder and harder for me to like put up with how different this is from Final Fantasy X. Because that's really where I think it changed, and just so having fun with the connections through listening to one of my teenage coming of age favorite bands, was also one of my coming of age favorite video game with the juxtapose with the movie that I just recently watched. Kind of a pretentious analysis, that I'm trying to put over this game and the movie and everything together. Take Back Sunday seemed to fit, so that's why I put those.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean that makes sense. Um, my next question is, what is the combat like in Final Fantasy XVI?
So while I talk, maybe try to find the image. Um, it's the GIF. It's the only GIF. And if you can find that GIF, it's like the
My,
second or
I have a
third
question for
thing.
you. Why did you make a lot of these web Ps instead of GIFs?
I thought they were GIFs. I just it's that
You
that
said
the
it's
answer
the
to that
only
question.
GIF. Almost all of these are animated.
Sorry. The only one that is like gameplay, the gameplay GIF.
Okay.
That's what I meant. I just misspoke. And right now, Block is talking to a woman, or what I see is a woman who is about to be, or she's not about to, but she will by the end of this movie be burned at the stake for witchcraft because they think that, like,
Oof.
the people think that she is the cause for the Black Plague.
Mm.
Um, and so Block is like, asked her, he's like, hey, do you know the devil? Because I got some questions for him. So
Mm.
that's what's going on there. So this GIF, but we don't have to look at it. I want you to find a paragraph, I think, right above it. Because the paragraph right above it goes back to the Tim Robinson question. I'm going to bob and weave through the themes here. Because Tim Robinson posits that world where it's like, okay, it's a bad fantasy world because all I know about it is like the bones are the money, the skeletons came back to life, you can't pull the hair out. And then so I liken that to the Final Fantasy. I say in Final Fantasy 16, you press square 4 times, then triangle, then circle, then square. Occasionally you will hold R2 and press square or triangle. If you want to really have fun, you might throw in an L2 every once in a while to speed things along. It's fine. It's a completely acceptable combat loop. But is it, and I said this earlier, is it good Final Fantasy? Is it truly, and this is one of the theses of the work, is it truly maturing the concept? What concept? The concept of Final Fantasy, the concept of good Final Fantasy games. Is it maturing that concept while being embodied by the rich history? Is it being the next Final Fantasy, or is it merely pretending? Is it merely being a doppelganger, an imposter in need of identification? Is it merely saying, look, this is Final Fantasy 16, but it's just actually a Devil May Cry? That's the gameplay. It's Devil May Cry. It's a lot of fun. You go in and out of it. You can switch the icons that you have. You can press square 4 times, then triangle and circle, and then hold L2. And you can do that the whole freaking game over and over. Some of it you can kind of like the moves do different things, like AoEs, and you can like freeze enemies or slow down time. I want to say the way you can go like your limit break functionality. It's kind of neat. You do more damage. The enemies look great. The graphics are awesome. Everything is really smooth. I wish I played the game. A lot of the 2 PS5 games I've played do this. So Elden Ring and 16 both do this. You can play in either like graphics mode or performance mode. I played in graphics mode and it played great and looked great, but I did play a little bit in performance mode, and it with the 60 FPS. I should have played it in that. I don't know what it ran at. Normally, I didn't notice any dips. It seemed fine, but you could tell that 60 butter smooth. But anyway, that's the gameplay. It's God of War. I love God of War. It's a fun game. Devil May Cry is not my favorite, but I like Bayonetta. I don't think they're completely mindless, but they're definitely not. Oh, you guys wait for the next essay I'm going to write about Metal Gear from 1987. That is like so different than this. This is, you have to call it mindless, even when you're pretending it's not. Even when you're pretending that Tim Robinson is actually brilliant satire, it's just mindless. It's mindless, and that's why I love it. Sometimes it's brilliant, but yeah, that's the gameplay.
So yeah, the
There, that
gameplay, and
part.
I think we had a discussion about the gameplay a while back where we got into an argument about like semantics. I thought, which was not productive. But after that argument, I made this image, which is up on the screen now. You can probably see it. I've blown it
Mm-hmm.
up. You can see it's Final Fantasy XVI, and there's a Scales of Justice, and you can see that God of War is on one side and that Dragon Warrior is on the other.
Yeah.
And God of War weighs more than Dragon Warrior, obviously. From what I can tell, and from what you've told me, and from all the footage I've seen of this game, this is like, to me, I thought, I like definitions. I think they're useful sometimes. This seems more like an action game. And the reason I say that is because when you hit the button, your character immediately does something. Whereas in an RPG, if you hit the button, your character does something usually much later than when you hit the button. And there's none of that here. Obviously, that doesn't make an RPG. That's just one facet, I think, and it's not a steadfast rule. But likely, if you hit the button and your character immediately does an action, it's more likely an action game than an RPG. And you can kind of just see that here in your endlessly repeating GIF of Clive doing burning slashes on a bunch of what look like characters from the Seventh Seal. Um,
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't
um,
even think about that, but yeah.
so while I think that this game does have RPG elements, like we've discussed, there's leveling up, there's some sort of rudimentary Clive customization. At least like he gets new stuff as he levels up. Maybe you can pick them in different orders, but ultimately, like level 100 Clive is going to be the same across every save file ever. And he's
Yeah.
probably going to be doing the same shit if you're going to min max, right? So there's no real customization here. So Clive isn't customizable. There's levels. It's just this is an action game, and it's a pretty action game. There's a lot of cool effects. It looks fun. For me personally, I haven't played this game, but for me personally, I would probably, unless there's a lot of other stuff going on, I would probably get bored of this combat pretty quickly. And the interface looks a lot like The Witcher too, so maybe it's more like The Witcher than I thought it previously. So my next question to you, and I'll do it in the Tim Rogers voice, was how. Let me try it again. Hold on. How does this? God damn it! How does this game stack up to other Final Fantasy games, gameplay wise, not story wise, but gameplay wise?
Gameplay wise, yeah, I'll answer that. So as far as the RPG question, I want to go in on that, but I avoid it because I don't find personally any utility in like denying it the name RPG. While I completely agree with you, I think action RPG probably gets the term like the gameplay across enough. But it essentially is. It's just God of War with like explicitly stating that Kratos is level 12. You know, so I do agree with that. I just don't know. Um, yeah, I don't. I think I make that point. Like, it's not. It's just not a proper. It's not a proper Final Fantasy game. 15 barely was. So how does it stack up? I'll go through the list here. I'm gonna put 4 minutes on the clock because I don't want to take too much time. Um, Final Fantasy One. It is worse than Final Fantasy One. Final Fantasy One had character parties. Final Fantasy Two. It is worse than Final Fantasy Two. Final Fantasy Two had character parties. Final Fantasy three. It is worse than Final Fantasy three because Final Fantasy three had character parties and job system had a job system. This could have a job system. It could. It could. It kind of does with the way that he changes icons, but character parties are better than job system. I don't want one dude with job system. That's Final Fantasy 14, and that's the other no game we don't talk about. Final Fantasy 4, it's worse than Final Fantasy 4. That game's better. 5, it's worse than that. It's got a lot of jobs, and it has character parties. Final Fantasy 6, it's only been 39 seconds
Five
so
gave
far.
us big boy jobs.
big boy jobs, man. It's like the shit from 3, but like 10 times the amount. It's cool. It's big boy jobs. 6. What did I say about it? Hold on, I'm gonna look. I'm gonna read it. 6. Yeah, all the playable characters. Again, we just got Clive here. 7. It gave us cinema. And 7 had a playable characters, and it had materia that you could customize pretty good in the sandbox there. 8, I like what I said about 8. It enhanced the CGI cinematics. They were better than 7's. And it also took the magic system of like Fire and Ultima and all the classics and did something different with it, which is worth something, even if you don't like it. What I say, it's absolutely
Junction-y,
Hegelian, and
yeah.
it's one of my favorites. Like it just denied the whole past by like honoring the past. And then 9, I liked my line about 9. I said 9 embodied a retrospective of the series as a whole and used that reverence to produce a swan song for the Sony PlayStation. That game's awesome. 10 is the best video game ever made, and all these games are better than Final Fantasy 16. 11 took the formula, went cyber, managed to be 20,000 leagues better than World of Warcraft. It's better. 12, it's better.
True.
13 even, right? 13, like I could switch. I could run around as Snow. I could run around as Vanille and Fang and Hope. And I remember these names, even though I haven't played the game in 12 years, right? I'm not going to remember Hugo Kepka probably in 10 years because I couldn't run around and play as them. And that hurt my feelings. 14, yeah, that one, but it does have character parties. I would say it's a little bit better than 16, but they're about the same, I think. But I would totally play 14 again before I ever play 16 again.
I have a few
and then 15,
thoughts. No, go ahead with your
yeah,
final. You're
yeah,
at the last one, so go
yeah.
ahead.
And last one, and 15 would probably be about as good as 16. Maybe 16 would be a little bit better if it was the same as when it first came out, when I played it, and you could only play as Noctis, but you did always have the party with you. But through the updates, 15, you can now switch between characters, and it totally is an action party-based action RPG. And it was the open world with the FF11 CDs. I mean, I'm fine with it. I wish it had been better. There's a lot of problems with FF15. A lot of it probably not even the people that made its fault, right? It was supposed to be, I didn't mention this, but it was supposed to be versus 13. We all know that. So I can forgive it a little bit because shit was going on behind the scenes when that game was made. It was my first PS4 game. I'm fine with it. FF16, they had all the time in the world. They had all the money in the world to let me control Sid, to let me walk around as Jill, to let me be gay Bahamut, and it refused to let me do that. So that's how it compares. And I am 40 seconds short of my 4-minute limit.
Nice. Good job. So I have a few thoughts on what you said. One of them, you wrote here that 9 embodied a retrospective of the series, which I agree with. It definitely did. And it did not. But from a setting perspective, it definitely did capture that old medieval style fantasy aesthetic that a lot of the older games captured, at least 1 to 5, and then it kind of everything changed at 6, right? Like everything changed, but everything changed for the better, I think, at 6, and we got like sci fantasy and stuff like that. But anyways, let's go on. You said 9 embodies a retrospective of the series as a whole and use that reverence to produce a swan song for the Sony PlayStation. If it's a swan song, I think that that means that there are not very many good games or RPGs for the PlayStation. I think 9 is a very linear game without any customization. It's one of the most, how do I say, just like standard Final Fantasy games ever. Like there's no there's no jobs. Every character gets everything at the end that they're supposed to. If we did the save file test, every save file would have probably the same party or the same Zidane. They would have the same Steiner with the same weapons, with the same armor, with the same abilities because the game doesn't let you do anything else. And that's why I don't like 9 from a gameplay perspective. I really don't like it. From a story perspective, I really do like 9 from a story perspective. Kuja and Zidane being like I don't know, fake life forms, and then Vivi's existential crisis about if he lives or not, or what's the point of living. So I do like 9. I just don't think it's a very good game. Final Fantasy X is really, 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 really good. Best video game ever made. I don't know about that, but it's one of the best Final Fantasy games ever made for sure. Even though it has a lot of the same problems as 9, but the Spirit is more customizable, I think, and it's just better. Final Fantasy XI is the best game ever made, so yeah. Next is Final Fantasy 12. We have a video on that one. You should go check that out. 13, I never played 13. I never wanted to. I kind of stopped with Final Fantasy after 12. And that's just because 13 looked like trash to me when I was a contrarian um, 18, 19-year-old or however the fuck old I was. And I just didn't want to play it. And I haven't played really a new mainline Final Fantasy game since then. I didn't play. I played 14. We played 14 a lot. I have most of the jobs at 90 in 14 with Endwalker, but I don't count that because it's an MMO. I didn't play 15, and I probably never plan on playing 16. Um, but I have a question for you. Why are characters or parties so important to you? Like, why is that so important? Like, let's say like this was like a turn-based, more like similar to 10 or 13 or any other Final Fantasy game, but you only played as Clive. Like, he was the only character. Um, that would still be a problem to you, I would imagine, right? Because it wouldn't be a party. Why are character parties so important? Is it just because every game in the Final Fantasy series has had one, and this doesn't? And if so, why is that important? Why should I care about that?
I would love, yeah. So here we go.
Yep.
Character parties are important, and I agree. Even if, like, yeah, they're more important to me than turn-based combat. Like I said, I say this in the article. I say, let me put my timer on the clock. I say that, um, for me to like be mean to the Final Fantasy developers about um the lack of turn-based, like they haven't done it in 20 years. They've not done it since Final Fantasy 12 in 2006, and that
Mm-hmm.
wasn't it. So they haven't done it since like 2001 or two with FF10. So the character parties, what it does, some of my like subjectively, because we love subjectivity on OCG. Some of my
Yes, we
subjectivity,
do.
um, subjective enjoyment of Final Fantasy and JRPGs in general, is like all the cool freaking characters. Like I think about how cool it was in Chrono Trigger when Magus joins your party, or when you can like put
Right.
Frog. I think it's cool when I talk to you
Frog is awesome.
about Frog rules.
Mag
He fucking rules.
is
So I
cool
love
too.
Magus is cool too, and you can miss him, right?
Yeah,
And
you
it's so
can.
cool. Or games like Chrono Cross, where or Final Fantasy VI, where you might not get all the characters, or where you've
Mm-hmm.
got 30 characters or 6 characters, even like Final Fantasy X, 6 or 7, or Final Fantasy 13, where there's only 6. But like, it's almost like a personal flavor. It's almost like a Jungian archetype amongst friends, like who you put in your character party, right? Oh, I'm a Titus or a Yuna person. Oh, I'm a Waka Kamari Lulu person. That person's an interesting person. They're more interesting than me, right? And FF16 denies like me to talk to someone about that. It
So
also
yeah,
denies me if I like. I think this is how I word it in the essay. I'm like, if I don't like Clive, and Clive is fine, he's an all right character, but he's not my favorite by far in the game. And some of them are cool. Sid is awesome. Dion, Gay Bahamut, he's really cool and like detailed, and there's a lot of depth and weight to his character. Jill looks cool. If I could run around as them and just kind of stare at their character and listen to the music and vibe out, I wouldn't mind the mindless combat so much, right?
mm-hmm.
The mindless combat, if I could switch and there was more depth, just a little bit more depth to the mindless combat, if there were character roles, like when you have one character, he's the tank, he's the magic user, he's the healer, he's everything. And like, I don't want a monolith. I don't want to just play Clive.
Quick question:
His armor.
is there healing in this game, like from magic perspective?
How were the heals done? I don't even remember. Let me look at the.
So this
Maybe it'll
game's
come up on
removed
screen.
healing magic. Is that what you're saying?
No, there's ways to heal. I just can't remember what the
Is it like
category is.
potions? Is it like doing
Probably one.
damage, like sucks the enemy's blood?
So there is Dark Souls style potions, I
Yeah.
think, that you
Mm-hmm.
like replenish, or you just get them as drops. And there's one of the icons probably does have a move that
Like,
cures you, but I can't remember. I could be
gotcha.
wrong about that.
Yeah, so I thought it was interesting how you said the parties. So when I asked you about parties, one of the things you said was like it's interesting to see which characters people pick in their save file for Final Fantasy. Like the Lulu, Titus, Riku party is very interesting, and I agree with
Or
that.
people that
I
pick
think that
Quina, right?
yeah, I think that's
Like Quina
interesting.
or whoever.
I think your problem is that the character parties are just another level of abstraction behind just general customization. So this is another thing that the game has removed just from a customization standpoint. You play as Clive. There's really no customization with him. you don't even have parties, so you can't even customize what characters you want to use. Even if the characters were all linear characters who all leveled up in a linear fashion with the same stuff, and you couldn't customize them at all, at least you could pick which ones you wanted to use. But it doesn't even give you the benefit to do that, right? It robs you of that as well. So I think that might be one of your reasons. I didn't think about that. It was that it's just another level of customization, and I do think it's interesting how people pick different parties. Like when I was a kid playing Final Fantasy VII, I picked Cloud. I picked fucking Vincent always, and it was either like probably Red. I think was the other one because it was a dog. Like that's cool, right? So I think you'd only have three in that game. And those are the characters I usually pick. But when I was older, and the last time I played Final Fantasy VII, I actually picked different characters entirely. Like I didn't pick Vincent because from when I was a kid to when I was 20, I thought Vincent was too edgy and cringy for me to play with anymore. I thought he was too much. I thought his character aesthetic was too much. Even though I really liked it when I was a kid, and I still like kind of like that dark kind of aesthetic. He was just too. He's just too much. Yeah, like I'm not gonna play with Vincent anymore. He's cringe. He's too like grim, dark, and edgy. So now I usually pick Sid, Cloud, and then probably like Yuffie or something like that. Would be my final party in Final Fantasy VII nowadays. If I'm not gonna min max and like spam limit breaks with Barret or whatever. Um, Same thing with 8, and I think 8 has a really weak cast to begin with. I think Squall is cool. He's kind of one dimensional and lame, but he's cool looking, and he's got a gunblade, which is really cool. But there's not really much you can do there from a party perspective. I think I'm going on a rant, so you can stop me whenever I want. But I really like the point of like I picked this party when I was younger, and I no longer pick that party when I'm older. I think that's very interesting because I like that. I like that personal level. But 8, like I was saying, 8 doesn't have a very good party like cast. I don't think so. I think almost always with 8, I pick Squall, Irving because he's got a gun, and he like his limit break where he shoots like over and over again if you hit the button. That's really cool to me. I like how it adds like an action game trope into the battle system. And I think 8 does that with everything. Like with Renzo Kukin with Squalls, like it's an action like timing based, like rhythm based limit break, which is really cool. Irving's you hit the button to shoot the gun. And then the third character I'd use in that game, I think, is usually Zell or like Selfie or something. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm going on a rant. I think we should go on to the next question. But I appreciate your answer on how it stacked up to Final Fantasies of the past, and I think your answer was it doesn't. Is that right?
Yeah, it doesn't. It does. The gameplay doesn't.
The gameplay does not.
Everything else, because a lot of people worked on this game, and I don't want to take away from some of the artwork. If someone's job is to like write the story for this game, I don't want to be like, I don't know, I feel like when I say the game sucks, and like that person might take it personally, I don't want the person that wrote the dialogue or wrote the situation to take personally. I don't want to take the person that it's a lot of people's fault. It might even be the fans' fault, really, right? Because if you go to the subreddits, like the fans love this. So like the people that play Final Fantasies like love this game. So I apparently am wrong. So yeah.
Yeah, you're wrong always. So my next question, and we're at 48 minutes. So some of my questions are kind of vacuous, but they get pretty deep later on, and I think you'd want to talk about them in detail. So my seventh question is a meme question, which why do I have to eat food at home when I want McDonald's?
As an adult, you don't, but as a kid, like you had to. So I just said that as like, you know what, like this game is like a pale imitation of what I wanted. That's it. It's like I don't care if what I want is bad for me. I don't care. It doesn't matter. It's what I want. And if you're telling me, well, we got the same thing at home. We have food at home. It's not McDonald's.
Right.
And so
It's not Final Fantasy. It's Final Fantasy 16 is what we have at home.
Yeah.
We have real Final Fantasy outside. Final Fantasy 16 at home. Yeah, I got it. I just thought it was funny.
Yeah, I like that one a lot.
Calling this Final Fantasy at home. Yeah, I think it's good. How many characters are there? How many can you actually play as? This is a question. We've already been over this, really. You can play only as Clive. Is that true, though? Do the other characters just kind of like tag along and like shoot the monster behind you or something like that? They're completely... Is that what that happens? Okay. So there are other characters you just can't play as them. You can only play as Clive. Um, could you explain like a little bit about the characters? Like go through it quickly because we have a few other questions that are deeper than
Yeah.
this. But like, could you explain each character and particularly the wolf? Because I'm interested in the wolf or the dog.
Yeah.
I like that the dog. So yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna put in interest of time because I do want to get through everything, and I'm feeling pretty good. I'm only on like my second beer, so I'm pretty
All
good.
right.
I still gotta go to bed eventually, so probably maybe
Mm-hmm.
11:15 for this. I'm gonna try, but don't worry about time. We don't have to speed. I'm gonna do 1 minute timers though. So characters of the game, I might not remember all of them, but there's Clive, there's Josh. You play as Clive. Sometimes Josh comes with you. Jill will come with you. Sid will come with you until he dies. The dog you always have. Torgal is a lot like I think Ghost from Game of Thrones. Jon Snow's dog. There's a name for those. But anyway,
Mm.
Torgal is cool because like he's not quite an icon, but he's Fenrir. He's Fenrir in the game. But I only have
Oh,
30
is he?
seconds. So
That's
other
cool.
characters, yeah, he's cool. But he doesn't get big or anything. Other characters are just like they're different versions of the different icons, and they have different roles. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're leaders or they're sons of the emperors. And they can turn into these classic Final Fantasy summons and cause havoc and fight each other. Yeah, so that's the main characters and the relatives of these characters and the inhabitants of the world and the main villain, Ultima.
Ultima. That's interesting that the main villain's Ultima because that ties into some Matsuno stuff. Because Matsuno did that with Final Fantasy Tactics, and I think Ultima. I think it's mostly Final Fantasy Tactics where Ultima is the final boss. Ultima's evil, and in Final Fantasy XIV there's a Tactics raid or whatever the hell they call it in that. That's actually I think written by Matsuno, poorly written by Matsuno, but written by him. He shouldn't have followed up Tactics at all. There was no reason to. But the final boss in Tactics is Ultima, and then in that raid boss you fight Ultima again, which you know because we've played that. From depths as dark as night. That quote where she like puts you into the darkness and you have to run through the little maze in the black.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
I'm talking about, yeah. Um, cool. So you said Torgal. So there's a Sid, right? Tell me about the Sid.
Sidolphus Telamon, put a minute for Sid. Sidolphus Telamon, he's leading like some kind of charge, like a rebellion group. He's kind of like a Barrett almost, right? And like he doesn't care about the war between the two continents. All he wants to remake the world. He's a dominant. That's what they call the people that house like the icons, the summons. He's a dominant. He's the dominant of Ramu, of Rama. I think they call him Rama instead of Ramu. I hope. But anyway, he's super cool. He's badass. He smokes blunts. I don't think it's he smokes these hand rolled cigarettes. And he kind of adopts Clive. Like he saves Clive because Clive is sold into slavery after his dad is murdered. When his mom betrays the family and he goes into a rage in which he kills his brother. That's the end of the first phase when he's a little boy. But that's Sid. So Sid wants to create a new world where there's no gods, where there's no dominance, where there's no crystals. He's figured out that if you destroy the big crystal mountains that dot the landscape, there's 5 of them, and there's some pictures of them in the essay, at least one of them. He's like, if we destroy these, um, that should stop the blight, and it will also stop magic as well. But like most people don't have magic in the world. And some of your questions might touch on this, so I'm gonna stop in a second to let us do the next question. But like some of them don't have magic, and like only the dominants do. And Sid is so brave that he's like, I'm fine if I don't have it, or if none of us have it, because like we should all be equal. He's like the Martin Luther King Jr. of Valistea. He's really cool. He's good. He's almost like I'm like, man, should he be this cool? Because like, or maybe I'm just a goon for like falling for it. But he's nice. I like him.
That's cool. I think I think this Sid has a lot of callbacks to the Final Fantasy Tactics Sid. That's probably intentional because I think Matsuno is one of the inspirations for a lot of
Yeah.
this.
And he's got Balthier vibes as well. I think you would appreciate. You
Yeah.
would maybe like Sid, I think, but yeah, he's like a. I like him more than Balthier because he's a little more like I don't know. He's almost like a Jesus type. Like he dies midway through the game, and that's when the last time jump happens. And all of a sudden, Clive. It's weird. Clive is the leader of the resistance, and he goes by Sid. It's like he adopts it as like his screen name, and like he's using that to like kind of
That's funny.
cause chaos. But Yeah, it's neat. So that's the Sid. That's the Sid office
I'm
telemovie.
Captain Von Rauschenberg. So, anyways, no, I was saying that they're similar, not only in that way, but in the very technical way that the Sidolphus from Final Fantasy Tactics, Sidolphus Orlando, is the Thunder God Sid, and you actually fight him in the raid in Final Fantasy XIV as well. The big guy with the swords with the three different things. You know what I'm talking about? And he like does the big sword swipes. You have to move away and move back.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, he's like the Thunder God in that game, and I think he's like possessed or something by Ramu, or maybe not, but or whatever the Thunder um,
Yeah.
summon is in that game. So they're similar in that way. So that's cool. My next question. This is getting more into the themes that you cover in the essay. So let me go down to those.
And a good point. Let me while you're looking at that, it might be a little ahead on the stream, but since we're moving into the themes, we're at a great part about midway through the movie, a little bit past midway through. Anytime you see someone eating in books or on film, it's communion. It's an act of communion. It's boring to watch someone eat food. So this is the communion in the seventh seal. This is I
Mm-hmm.
want to say if you want to control F strawberries, maybe I think I mentioned this. This is the part where the Black Plague's going on. But here's an actor, and this I can reference this later when you ask about the themes. There's an actor and his wife and their little baby. They just got kicked out of a town during the Black Plague. Everyone's dying, and Block, like, he's playing chess with death himself, and he eats these strawberries, and this is when he realizes, like, hey, like, he's like Carl from Aqua Teen, that quote you love, like, none of this matters. None of this fucking matters. And he's having fun eating amidst all the absurdity. So, I mean, if anyone's watching, there's someone else besides me and you, I think. Or shoot. Oh, Tumahab. Hell yeah, dude, and a movie. So yeah, that's what Dragon Bahamut backwards. I love that. But yeah, so she's giving him the wild strawberries. He's about to eat them. He's taking communion. He's learning his
Hold on,
ways.
no. Please stop for a second. Please stop. I'm sorry, but
Sorry.
Tumahad's watching. I'm sorry, I didn't realize. His
Yeah, he's in
name
the
is
chat.
Dragon Bahamut backwards. I was
Yeah,
trying
you
to
didn't
figure out
realize
what the
that?
hell his name meant. I didn't realize that. No, you got that before I did. Holy
My
shit,
brain
that's
works
so
like that. I
cool.
look at things like spatially. So for some reason, I really am good at the backwards shit. Like bad at everything else in my life, but I could do the backwards name.
Wow, I had no
Yeah, thanks
idea.
so much.
Yeah, games and
Because I was
lore.
like,
Hell yeah, that's what these streams are about. I'm also
hell
Dennis.
yeah.
Yeah, we know who you are. Dude, we love you.
Oh,
You're our
this is
biggest
Flock.
fan.
This is Flock with the strawberries. Yeah, I love you so much. Look, he's eating the strawberry. At least
Platonically.
I'm a little, yeah, platonically. So where was I? What was I talking about?
You're talking about strawberries.
Oh yeah, that's just the part. So we're going into the themes. You might as well go ahead with the
Okay,
question.
so I'll do my best Tim Rogers voice for the themes. What? Hold on. I have to like train my voice to get into it. What does freedom have to do with anything?
All right, so I'm flying to you straight from the United States of America, where freedom is a concept that everyone likes to talk about and put on merchandise and like not be able to define, right?
I don't
And
value freedom above other things. Just go ahead. Sorry.
so I just, in trying to figure out how I want to talk about this game, I realized that like freedom is something that like what does it mean? Because in the movie we're watching right now, like he's not free. He's playing chess right now against like his captor, right? Our captor, my captor right now. In the game
Death.
we're looking
I'm
at in the
death.
top left corner, yeah, he's become
I'm the
he's
captor.
become it. So Clive in the same way, like death in Seventh Seal functions a lot like Ultima in Final Fantasy 16, I think. You're fighting against something that's created you. I mean, death in Seventh Seal hasn't created you, but you're fighting against like the inevitability, right? You're fighting against the void. You're like us fighting against the heat death of the universe. Um, and so freedom is something like when you think about it like that, like what could it really be? And so I go into some of the concepts of like negative and positive freedom, like freedom, like to not have shackles on you, like in Final Fantasy 16, or freedom to like do what you want, but like what is it that I should want, which is what Antonius Block is playing for
Gotcha.
on the chessboard there. So that's freedom a little bit. That's why I chose to write about it.
Awesome. So I had a question about positive and negative. I think positive and negative freedom, but I think it's typically called positive and negative liberty. And the way that I understand positive and negative liberty is that positive liberty is like the government telling you, "Oh yeah, you can do whatever you want, and within boundaries, you can go out to the park, and you're free to do that. You know, you're a free man or whatever." Negative liberty is like the concept of not being infringed by others and their acts of freedom. So, for example, I have a perfect example for this that I think illustrates it. It's the vaccine, and this isn't a political stream, but let's say the vaccine, right? Um, let's say there's two people, and one, they're neighbors. They live next to each other, and one of them is elderly and very, very likely to get, let's use COVID. Very likely to get COVID and die, because she's in the death group or the age range for possible death for COVID. And the neighbor, they meet all the time, they hang out. But the neighbor is a hard Joe Roganite, right? And will not get the vaccine. And when pressed, she says, well, it's my freedom, it's my choice, it's my positive freedom. It's my positive freedom not to get the vaccine. I'm gonna choose to, use my bodily autonomy, and I'm not gonna get the vaccine. But what this is actually doing is infringing on the elderly woman's freedom, because what it's doing is this elderly woman now cannot hang out with you, can't be around you, because you don't get the vaccine, you could get COVID and kill her. So I think that's the idea of negative freedom, is other people infringing on you indirectly in a way. Does that kind of make sense?
No, it does, and I love that you brought up COVID because, like, I mean, COVID was a plague, like the Black Plague,
Yeah, like
right?
Seventh Seal,
But when we
right?
think about freedom, right? Like, so, like, what? So, like, even in that context, like, what is even freedom to get a vaccine when you've got this specter of death that's following you, like, everywhere you
Right.
go? You
And
know,
yeah, exactly.
and I think both of these works are like exploring that a little bit because the world in Final Fantasy 16 is blighted. Like there's death that's coming from this god that's using the energy to like try to remake the world, and the seventh seal is just the bacteria that's killing everything. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Positive and negative freedom is kind of interesting to me, but I just like the way I just brought that up to highlight the play on it that Final Fantasy 16 does, where you have these dominants who should be masters, and like a lot of them you meet are in positions of power, but then others are literally slaves. Clive is enslaved. Shiva is enslaved. Clive's enslaved because he doesn't know that he harbors Ifrit. Shiva is enslaved. I meant to write about this. I don't think I did. Shiva's enslaved because uh, the people they have like
Because she's
children that
hot.
they say she is hot, but they say they'll kill children if she doesn't do it what what they want. They're using children's lives. So but like, the whole reason they're doing it though is because they don't want to lose the access to magic that they have. So they're kind of playing chess, right? They're kind of playing. The society is playing chess with the dominants. The dominants are playing chess with society, and that they're like, okay, you guys have the power of Shiva, you have the power of Titan, you have the power of Bahamut, whatever. Like you got to convince us that you're not going to forsake us because there's a lot more of us than there are of you, even though you are only like people that have access to magic. And so like there's also that sort of um like environmental appeal, right? Like the appeal to like usage of resources, like hoarding resources and things like that. And
Yeah.
Sid, his whole goal is like he's like fuck it, right? Like I don't want any of the dominant shit. I don't care that I'm Rama. I don't want any of the people enslaving the dominants. Like Sid's goal is to destroy the crystals, and if you destroy the crystals, like magic is done. And so this is one of the you'll like this actually. Let me finish this and I'll be done with that question maybe, or you could chime in. Sid is always the fucking airship. There's no airship in Final Fantasy 16. Sid's daughter is trying to make one, which is kind of cool. But Sid wants to destroy the crystals and delete magic from the world because he believes in technology, and I think that's a brilliant use of the Sid archetype in Final Fantasy in the story and with this kind of theme, right? To use technology to liberate people from the madness of fighting over resources, right?
True, but that's kind
It's
of the
smart.
precursor to how the every empire in the Final Fantasy series started, was that either they couldn't use magic or magic was an oppressive force, so they came up with technology instead, like the Magitech technology
Right,
in
right,
6 and then 14, the Mako reactor, things like that. I
right,
find it
right.
interesting. Yeah, I think in 16, sounds like magic is used as a form of oppression across the world, which makes sense to try to abolish it or get rid of it or whatever. Yeah, I'm getting
Well,
all wind up right now. Go ahead.
it also makes like, okay, so they're the dominants,
Mm-hmm.
but there's also, and I forget the name of it, but there's another character, and they thought Clive was one of these characters, but he's not. He's actually a dominant. But there's some characters that like can kind of do a little bit of magic. Like they can't like be like destructive whirlwinds like Clive and Shiva and Hugo Kupka, Titan, Dion, and Bahamut, and the rest of them. But they can do like they can set things on fire, and they can I don't know. You'll see them in the towns, like drying clothes, like with their fire, like they're next to the clothes on the clothesline, like doing little flames with their fingertips. There's a couple other examples I can't remember because I'm getting wind up on beer right now. But yeah, so it's weird. It's like magic does oppress, but like there's so many more people that don't have magic that just straight up use physical force. Like what you find out is that like, okay, there's an emperor who doesn't know magic, but his son is Bahamut. And
Mm-hmm.
so he manipulates Bahamut to inspire the non-magical people to help subjugate like other people, other magic users, and other dominants, right? Um, so it's interesting the interplay of like, okay, the weak are on top, but they're on top because they're actually weaker, and it brings into question. 16 brings into question a lot of like, who is free? What is freedom? Is freedom power? Is it the ability to exercise power, or is
Yep.
it the ability to not have people infringe on like me exercising whatever power I already have? And Sid is probably the best character in the game. Dion's like the coolest. Sid is probably the best. But Sid believes in a world where, hey, let's build our own fucking world. Who cares about gods? Who cares about magic? If we're gonna do this, like, it's like that scene in Final Fantasy X where Waka, like, he's like, all right, this is Unalesca. This is my god that I'm about to
Yeah,
get
the
the Stone
Aaron
Gates
scene
back.
where Aaron gives him like the speech where he's like, "This is your story. You need to like make a decision
Yeah,
right now." Yeah, that's the best scene in Final Fantasy X,
it's a
in my
great scene.
opinion.
It is.
And it's
It
it's
is. And
it's in the midst of a battle too, so it's like it's not even a scene. It's just like you're involved in that scene. Like the
yeah, it's
player
a
is
good
involved
scene.
in it. And that's a great scene. Yeah, I think what you were saying about freedom, the freedom discussion is going on a pretty long time. But you mentioned resources. A few things. One, pivoting from resources. You said about powers, freedom, power. In a world where only some people have magic, that's an extremely imbalanced world, right? So it makes sense that somebody would want to abolish magic completely and put everybody on the same playing field. Totally makes
Hmm.
sense. Magic would. That's almost like if I don't know, like an IQ thing. Like if somebody has a bajillion IQ and you can prove that, and then somebody who doesn't, they're going to have a way more opportunity than the person who doesn't.
Yeah.
The resource thing is interesting because it ties into the idea of positive and negative freedom. So resources, let's say you have like, there's a lot of people who call themselves anarcho-capitalists. We have a friend who says that, and they're like, oh well, if we just like it's complete anarchy and we just let corporations do whatever they want, it'll all work itself out. But it won't, because the first company that gets your nearby oil mine or whatever is now a monopoly on oil in your area, and everybody around you is totally fucked because of that. You can't get into the oil business because you already have McDonald's who have you know gotten all the oil in the area, and it's make oil, make nukes, make oil. There's nothing you can do, so they're imposing on your freedom in a way. They used their freedom to get the oil, but in that way, they've consumed all the oil. They're taking it, they're hoarding it. They got guys with guns in front of all of the oil refineries that are like, you cannot fuck with our oil. We control the oil in this area. They use their ultimate freedom to do that. But what that does is it actually um, damages and imposes on the freedom of other people who may want to do that or just may want to get some oil for themselves. Does that make sense? Sorry, I'm kind of drunk.
Yeah. No, it makes total sense, and I think essentially a lot of those lines are what like this game like tries to kind of talk about, like what is an even playing field. I mean, I'm thinking a lot lately because of my job and stuff like that. Like I've been thinking a lot about Martin Luther King. I've been reading a lot of his speeches and shit like that, and like that whole thing too, like equality. Like what, like taking like Sid realized that taking the power away from the dominance was good for the dominance.
Right.
Dominants.
It's good for
Like they
everybody.
think they're
Yeah.
losing power. It's good because that evens the playing field, and we don't need to subject
Yeah,
anyone to like
you're no longer
power.
potentially like a slave or some king's like plaything. You're just a normal person, just like everybody else. You're not going to be abused or oppressed. But like on the alternate side, they're also not going to be able to use like really cool fucking powers, right? So there's like a
Right.
little bit of a trade off in some situations, but it seems like Sid was on the right track without playing the game. It seems like Sid was
Yeah.
in the right mindset for sure. So let's move on to my next question, which is kind of a filler question, but I think it's interesting. A lot of outlets say that the story goes off the rails. What are your impressions of the story? Does it go off the rails?
In a word,
Hold on.
yes.
Specifically, what I've read is that a lot of people say it's okay until like the last portion, and then it goes completely off the rails, like a completely different kind of, I don't know, story and setting and theme comes in to play or something. I don't know. Go ahead. I'm drunk. Sorry.
Okay, I would say I'm gonna put because I'm gonna have to end in about 10 minutes. So I'm gonna do rapid fire. I'm gonna put a minute on the clock. Um, so off the rails, I was never surprised by where it went. I mean, it starts off a grim dark, like it goes off the rails the way Berserk goes off the rails, but not quite as hard. So if you've seen Berserk, like it's not really that surprising. Nothing. If you've seen the Berserk anime, like nothing's gonna be as surprising as like when the eclipse happens when you're watching
Right.
like this
Yeah.
cool castle. So when you find out that actually the crystals are actually bad, and that Ultima is the god that created all of mankind in order to create the best human like Clive that could actually absorb all the icons and remake the world. When you find that out, I wasn't surprised because I played other Final Fantasy games. So no, I don't think it goes off the rails. It's cool. It goes off the rails, quote unquote, in a way that some other Final Fantasies go off the rails towards the end. But it's nothing I haven't seen before.
Yeah, I think
But it's super cool.
I think people's impressions are like, oh, this was like a political game for the first 3/4 of the game, and then it becomes like oh, evil god is, you know, torturing everybody type of thing. But that's par for the course for Final Fantasy, and that's par for the course for literally any JRPG. So if somebody says that the story goes off the rails from what you said, it sounds just like they're zooming, as they say. Next question, since we're on a sorry, something made a noise right there. We're on a timer. How do the concepts of positive and negative liberty play into that? We already talked about that, so I'm going to delete that one. What is the connection between the 1957 movie The Seventh Seal and Final Fantasy XVI?
Okay, I'm gonna put 2 minutes on the clock for this one because this might knock out some other questions too.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 200 because I want to talk about Seven Seal and Kierkegaard a little bit. So Kierkegaard's Knight of Faith and Abraham and all this, like you and me and anyone watching, and we probably should have started with this kind of stuff. But like why do we live? Like what's the purpose of living and dying? And
There's no
how
purpose.
can I be okay with dying? There is no purpose. But yeah, if I'm gonna have anxiety, what Kierkegaard called angst about it,
Yeah,
um,
why do we have
I got a
anxiety if there's no purpose? Good question.
good question. Yeah, because I don't have time to get into it, but I get scared of death sometimes. But maybe you, I don't know. But Antonius Block is scared of death, so scared he's using his chess skills against him. And what Kierkegaard says is that you just gotta believe. You just gotta find something that makes you feel good, and that feel good thing you can believe in. So for Antonius Block in the Seventh Seal, right now they're doing the witch. They're burning the witch at the stake. What Antonius Block does is he's like, I'm gonna believe in the actor and his little baby and his visions, and I'm gonna throw my chess match. I'm gonna admit my defeat, and I'm going to believe in the absurd. And same thing for Kierkegaard. The same thing for Abraham, who's going to kill Isaac, his only son, for God. And the same thing for Clive. I mentioned in the essay, like after he kills God, like the future is looking pretty bleak. And Ultima's like, well, what do you plan to do now that you got your freedom? I think he uses that word. He's like, now that you got your freedom, what do you plan to do? And Clive's just like, I honestly don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I have no idea. It's just too much freedom. I have no idea. I need somebody to tell me what to do. That's just kind of how we all go. Like, if we were given ultimate freedom, what would we do? What would I do? Um,
Yeah.
Depends on what ultimate freedom actually is. I think as a concept, ultimate freedom is just kind of vacuous, kind of platitude almost, where it's like it's just two words, ultimate freedom. I don't think ultimate freedom exists in our real world. So my next question is, how does Final Fantasy XVI stack up to other Final Fantasies, story and concept wise?
Yeah, I said it's probably one of the best of them all. That's kind of hard. I mean, against like the Super Nintendo ones and before, like obviously, um, I mean, I'm probably a little bit. It's the new one, so I'm a little bit. It's the shiny one, so I'm probably a little bit biased because of that. But I had no problems with it. I felt as a 30-plus-year-old, like early 30-year-old man, I like that this character is basically the same age as me. Like at the end of the game, that felt cool.
Yeah, that's good.
Even though,
From going
yeah,
from like Squall is 18 or 17 years old or whatever the
yeah,
hell. Yeah.
yeah, that was cool. And like seeing it trying to be mature, and even though like it uses the F word in a way that seems like too try hard at times, it it did feel mature. It didn't feel like Saints Row or the old, Grand Theft Auto games, like the try hard mature. It felt like the stuff that was happening. I mean, when Ifrit kills Phoenix early on in the game, you feel it, man. You feel sad. I do. I felt sad during some of these scenes. Um, I wish I made probably 10 or 12 images for this. I took, I think, 500 screenshots. It was a lot. Like so many screenshots from this game were like just cinema. It was really pretty. Um, and like I do, as much as I hate this game, at the same time, I want to say I do love a lot of it. Like I might not play it again, but I'll definitely talk to people about it because um, the people that made it, it tried really hard to like pull on some heartstrings and explore some mature concepts and I don't know, make some cool. It's not the best one. It's probably the worst one. If it was a side game, that was my big thing, right? If it was a Final Fantasy side game, it would be awesome. Like if it was like, okay, you have Final Fantasy Tactics, that's the strategy side game, and now you have Final Fantasy Action, that's the action side game. This would be a really, really fucking cool game in ring.
Gotcha. Yeah. This would be like the Dirge of Cerberus of whatever, right? It's like a shooter game, an
Yeah,
action shooter game. Interesting plot. It builds on Final Fantasy VII. But it's totally removed from Final Fantasy in every way but name. Is what I'm kind of getting from what you're saying. So the final question that I have is, what are you hoping the reader actually gets out of your insanely long and convoluted? That's not a bad thing. Essay about the Seventh Seal and Final Fantasy.
all right, so it depends on who the audience is, but anyone that's going to bother to read it, I imagine what they're going to get is like maybe a cool movie to watch. Um, Hopefully they've already played Final Fantasy 16 because it spoils a fuck ton of it of the story. But
True,
if they've
and
already played it,
yeah, this stream does too for sure.
right? But if they've already played it, maybe they can be like, because like there's gonna be a dude who argues with his friend about like, oh, I like this game, and his dumb friend is gonna be like, that game sucks. He's gonna be like, you know what? You haven't seen the Seventh Seal, and that friend's gonna be like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you haven't seen
Uh,
on computer games essay or stream video on YouTube about this game. That's why you don't think it's very good. But if you just watch those things,
yeah.
you would realize, yeah.
Like I think it has merit because like I think the game has merit because it brought me this experience. It allowed me to make these cool pictures that I'm looking at. It allowed me to like add more context to the played experience, also to the viewing of the movie, the Seventh Seal, also to thinking about Kierkegaard. I should have went into that more, but whatever, not that important. Um, but also it like being a real person too. Like think about my real life. Like when I don't know, like I live in a state and I have a job where like I get a lot of worries about a lot of the legislation and things that make my job harder. But at the same time, who gives a fuck? Because like death is always on my back door. I could die tomorrow. I'm always playing chess with death. Like none of this matters. None of this is serious. And Clive reinforces that notion, right? Clive is like, I honestly don't know what's gonna happen to me if I act like this, but I feel like acting like this. So that's if you like playing action RPGs or action games and want to play one with a cool story for 70 hours that has like some Final Fantasy elements like crystals and spells and
Moogles,
yeah.
does it have tomberries in it? Are there tomberries?
You know what? I don't think there's tomberries or cact no. Oh, I want to say there's no tomberries or cactuses. There's King Behemoth, there's Malboros, there is a Moogle. Um
According to this, there's like there's a line of dialogue that uses the word Tonberry. There are Moogles, you said?
There's one Moogle. I think Moogles are like a mythical species, and like there's one that you befriend and you're surprised.
There are
Or the Don
Chocobos. I saw that, the Chocobos.
there are you ride one, and it's what's it has a name, and it's so like some parts of the plot
Ambrosia.
aren't.
Ambrosia, I think I was watching the stream. It's Ambrosia, right?
That sounds right.
His childhood Chocobo, who he finds later on when he's 30 years old.
Finds later, just like the dog, right? His childhood, but then they hand wave away the dog because the dog is actually Fenrir. So,
Yeah,
but it's
so
cool.
what are the basic Final Fantasy tropes? So we have Chocobos, we have Moogles,
Sid,
Tonberries, I would say Sid's in here. So we have Sid, we have Moogles,
Crystal.
we have Sidolphus. I'm sorry, we have Sidolphus, we have Moogles, we have Chocobos, and we have Tonberries, vaguely mentioned, right? And what is there any other thing? Like, there's no
Well, yeah, I mean,
airships. There's
there's the big, I mean,
crystals,
the huge crystals.
crystals.
I
Yeah.
think it's one of the better
Right.
invoked usages of the big crystals in the stories.
To me, the
It also
crystals in
has,
this hold on, just so I can throw it. The crystals in this game felt like the Crystal Tower area in the Final Fantasy XIV expansion, um, Shadowbringers. That's what every town looked like to me. Is like the Crystal Exarchs area. I think it's called the Crystarium. And
yeah.
let me just get into this, but I think even looking at footage like this, I know you told me this isn't the case, but this game looks like This game looks like an expansion to Final Fantasy XIV, except the combat is more Devil May Cry. It's got like side quests that come up. The map. He's pulling up this map that looks legit, like a Final Fantasy XIV fucking map in every area. Like, did Yoshi P just literally remake Final Fantasy XIV, kind of rewrite it a little bit to be more like Devil May Cry, and then just go with that formula? Does this game feel like Final Fantasy XIV at all? Like in the way it progresses? If let's say if it was an expansion to Final Fantasy XIV, and we replace the combat with Final Fantasy XIV combat, would this satisfy expansion, or would it feel too different in that case?
Um, no, it never felt like like Final Fantasy 40. The only part there was one part that gave me like a very surreal Final Fantasy 14 experience, and that is the moment that Clive accepts a side quest.
Mm-hmm.
The way that the text pops up on screen and like the cadence of like the sound effect, like the little like violin chord or little violin couple of notes that happens, it reminded me so much of like when you accept like a leave quest in Final
Gotcha.
Fantasy 14. That part like felt exactly
Like
like
dun
playing
dun
some
dun dun dun
FF14.
dun, or something like that. Like when you take the.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I'd probably really like this game if I played it from a narrative perspective because I really like stories where like the hero has a dog. Does the This is a huge spoiler, but like I
Uh-huh.
saw him in this cutscene. He was like, "Oh, dog, you hear something too? You smell something back there?" You know, the dog is a character as well, and he's recognizing that the dog is a party member, quote unquote, just like he is, and he isn't really, treating him as lesser. That's his faithful companion. Does the dog die or anything?
I can't remember what happens actually.
Because if the dog dies, I don't want to play the game.
He might die.
No, really? Oh my
I don't remember
gosh.
what happens. I'm just googling it. Does Torgal die? Torgal does not die. He makes it to the end of the narrative without too many close calls. It says. Yeah, I don't
Wonderful.
remember him dying.
Wonderful.
Um,
Because you remember
Torgal's
I,
pretty
Robot?
cool.
You ever seen that movie? I, Robot?
Yeah.
With Will Smith. It's
The
based on
dog dies?
it's based on an old novel. Yeah, the dog dies
Not
at the very end.
Robot. Not I Robot, but I Am Legend. I Am Legend, right? Is that what you're
Oh
thinking
yeah,
about?
fuck yeah, you're totally right. Sorry, I'm wind up. I Am
Oh, this is the
Legend.
scene though. This is the scene where Block he's gonna lose the chess match on purpose, and I think that's gonna line us up with our ending pretty good. Look, he lost. Look at Block. He's like, you know what? I don't care anymore. I don't care. It's like Tim Robinson. And he's like, I don't want to. It's a sketch where he's like, I don't want to be here anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And someone's like, what are you talking about? He's like, I don't want to. I don't want to live anymore.
I like the aesthetic of death in this movie. He's like a bald dude with a hood on, or a very.
Yeah.
Oh, he disappeared. He's gone. Just like we will be when this stream ends. Gone.
That's good.
So
I think
overall,
we added. Yeah, go ahead.
no, I think we covered pretty much everything about Final Fantasy 16. Overall, what is your final numerical score for Final Fantasy 16?
My
I'm just kidding. We don't really have
score.
any numerical
No,
scores.
I'm giving it.
Numerical
I'm
scores
giving
are
it
dumb.
one. I'm
It
giving
was
it
a
one.
meme. Don't answer the question.
I'm going to. I'm going to. It gets if you liked watching this, you could watch this again.
It'll be on YouTube probably tomorrow.
Yeah. I would say that. I mean,
Look at
it's a
that map,
game.
dude. That map is from Final Fantasy 14. Go ahead, keep going.
I was looking at Bahamut. The real ending was supposed to be him. Yeah. And I when I was younger, I knew more about that. I was looking at the.
Wait, did somebody send something in the chat? I have
Yeah,
only two screens right here.
Bahamut.
Dragon Bahamut. Yeah.
He's talking about I Am Legend. Yeah, I know because it's based off it's Matheson's novel. Matheson's I think it's called I Am Legend.
No, I agree. Yeah, the original sci-fi novel was good. I thought the movie was good, but it wasn't. It didn't live up to the novel, which I don't expect movies to usually. But I just hate movies where the dog dies.
and
I hate it. Go ahead.
there's a scene where they're going up the hill. We almost made it to the end of the Seventh Seal. The very last scene where the dance macabre, the dance to death going up the hill. I don't know. It's very cool, and it's very much like the end of Final Fantasy 16, where it's like I don't know how this shit is gonna go, but we're gonna do it. We're gonna dance in the face of death. We're gonna smile. We're gonna pretend this shit matters, even though we can prove that it doesn't.
I don't think we
That's
can
it.
prove that it doesn't. I don't think that's true.
I can't prove that question makes any sense. You know,
Exactly. So how can you prove that it doesn't?
you can't. You can't. You're right. You can't.
Exactly.
Anyway, I think this was a good one. I think we're about at an hour and a half. I'm gonna call it. I think I'm gonna have
I
to
think
call
this
it.
is our best one yet because one, frames never dropped. The stream was totally 100% good. It says drop frames 0%. So what that means is I can literally just straight upload this without any editing. So that's
Nice.
good. The second is I think the outline and the questions were coherent, and I think your answers were really good. And I don't think either of I think I got a little too faded, but you didn't.
I'm only on my second beer. I normally have 3, so I'm gonna drink another one when I'm off camera. I'm gonna drink another one. But yeah, that's what I did. I held pretty good, and I know 3 beers sounds crazy, but it's like maybe cut this
Three
part.
beers is nothing to me. I've had 4 glasses of wine. That's like 12 beers.
No, that's what I'm trying
Get
to
on my
explain.
level, you crazy motherfucker.
I'm gonna explain if you'll let me, but cut this from the stream. They're IPA, so they're 10%. So that's probably more like 4. That's more like 4, and I weigh 130 pounds.
Yeah, you weigh 2 pounds. Yeah, I forgot about that. That's true. Yeah. Anyways,
But it was a testament to. I think this is a good one. Anyway,
it was a great.
and Bahamut, thanks for showing up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
yeah, I appreciate you supporting us and like boosting us on Mastodon and stuff. Again, we don't make any money from this, and we actually go out of our way to try not to make money because this is our hobby. We obviously do like people engaging with us. Otherwise, that's part of the reason people make stuff, right? They want to be recognized. That's just human nature. But we do not make money from this. We don't beg people for money. I'm drunk, so I don't know what the hell I'm saying right now. But I like you. You're cool. Send me more garden photos or whatever. I don't even like food or gardening, but I like you, and I think what's his face likes you too. Oh, he's gone. That's interesting. What's going on here? Where did he go? Huh. Okay. I'm still here, but I logged off. I logged off. Alright, guys. Well, thanks for joining. I appreciate you watching. If you watch this whole thing, then God bless you, because you shouldn't have. But have a good night or day whenever you watch this video, and keep on keeping on and stay cool, etc. And additional platitudes and whatnot. So, goodbye.